How's it going, everyone, and welcome to a new Ironman series. Now this series is going to be called True Ironman series, and as I explained in the intro on what I'm going to be doing, you guys will find out why I decided to choose this name. Now first of all, let's start off with the two main rules that I'm going to have to follow. The first main rule is going to be that I cannot use any shops to buy myself any armor, weapons, or anything that I can use to train mage, melee, and range. Second of all is that I have to achieve everything myself, and this ties in with the first rule. Now let's talk about how these two rules are going to work out. So let's say, for example, I want to train my range. I cannot buy any arrows, bows, or any armors that I can use for range. I will have to either smith them, fletch them, or craft them to be able to use them, or I can use them if I obtain them from the drops. So this is pretty much going to be one of the biggest rules that I'm going to follow for my series, and this applies to mage and melee as well. I cannot buy anything from the shops that trains melee, range, or mage, and like I said, I would have to either use my skills to make everything for myself to use or obtain all those things from drops. Now the only exceptions that I'm going to be making for myself to be able to use the shops is if I need a certain tool to keep on working on a certain skill and I cannot obtain that tool from any of the drops at all, then will I have the ability to be able to buy that tool to work on a certain skill. Now let's say, for example, for Slayer, if I'm doing a slug test, then I will need to be able to use the shop to be able to buy myself a ton of salts to be able to finish off the slugs. Then of course that would make sense for me to be able to use the shop, because if I don't get the salts, then I cannot finish off the slugs. So this is pretty much going to be the only exception that I'm going to be making for the no shop rule. If I really need those supplies and I cannot get them from anywhere else, then will I have the ability to be able to use the shop to get them. Next up, I wanted to talk about all of these things. First of all, let's start off with how armor and weapons will be used. First of all, let's start off with all the melee weaponry. Now this is pretty straightforward and I'm just going to go through it quickly. Now if I want to use a certain weapon, let's say a whip, I would have to obtain the majority of the weapons before this. For example, let's start off with, I would have to obtain any of the bronze items, then iron, then steel, black, mithril, adamant. I'm going to skip this because it's the same tier as this weapon and there's no point obtaining it. The only difference is going to be if it's a higher tier, then I need to get it. Then I can use rune. After rune, I'm going to have to obtain a granite item before I use a dragon item. Once I unlock a dragon item, I'm going to skip this because it's the same tier, and I'm going to skip these three as well because these three are very difficult to obtain. So I'm going to skip all the way from 60 to level 70. And then after that, if I manage to get these weapons, it's just going to be in a row. Next up, it's going to be all the melee armors. Now, if I want to, let's say, for example, wear a full rune set, then I'll have to obtain the majority of the other sets before this. I would first have to earn the full bronze set. Now, it does not matter what I wear for that set. A full helm or med helm doesn't matter at all. As long as it's a full set, which means it's a helm, body, legs, and a kite shield, it's going to go all the way to black over here. Then I'm going to skip to mithril, and then after that I'm going to skip to adamant here, then to full rune. After that I'm going to skip to granites, which will be pretty interesting to obtain. I don't think anyone ever wears granites, and I think I'm going to be one of the only few people to wear full granites all the way till I obtain full dragon, which is pretty cool because usually never see people wear full granites. And like I said, this is why I like this series, because it's quite unique and you'll get to see me wear things that people usually don't wear. And then once I obtain full granite, then after that I'm going to have to obtain full dragon before I can wear full barrows, which is going to be quite challenging because dragon med helm isn't too hard to obtain, dragon legs aren't too hard to obtain because you can get them from wyverns. Then dragon square shield could be quite difficult to obtain. I would just have to get pretty lucky, but it's doable. The only really hard thing to obtain is the dragon chain body if I were to camp dust devils, but I'm not going to be doing that. Most likely I'm just going to try to do the Caliphate Queen to get the chain body because it's much easier to get it from her. Once I obtain the full dragon sets, then I can move on to start wearing full barrows. Now what I'm going to do for barrows is that to be able to wear a certain barrow set, just like any other sets, I would have to obtain the full set first. So once I obtain, let's say for example, full Varrox, then I can wear it. and then after that it's just going to go from here, but you know, this is going to take a while until I earn all of these things. Next up, let's move on to the range weaponry as well as armor. So the same rules applies here. I must unlock all the previous bows. Let's say for example, if I want to use a magic sharpwood, then I would have to unlock all of these previous bows over here, either by fletching or by getting them as a drop. Now as you guys can see, this bow over here, I'm going to exclude this because this is useless. Moving on to the armor over here, just like I stated previously for the melee armors sets, I would have to first obtain the full set to be able to move on. So let's say for example, I must first obtain the full leather set before I move on to this. And you know, this is pretty straightforward as well because I'm still going to have to do this in a row. Now once I come up to the frog leather set over here, I'm actually going to have to unlock this as well. I believe I get this from the hand chest, I'm not sure. So if this is possible to be unlocked by getting it as a drop or by skilling, I'm going to do this. Next up, I'm going to move on to have to obtain all the snakeskin armor over here, which is going to be pretty tough, but it's doable. Now the only things that I'm going to skip over here is going to be these 3 items because they're just too difficult to obtain, and I'm just going to spend too much time to get this. So once I obtain all of these previous armors over here, which is going to be the snakeskin armor, after that I can move on to the green dragonite sets. Now of course I don't have to obtain this because this is the same tier as the green dragonite. After that, then I can move on to blue dragonite. I'm also going to skip this over here because this is, I don't think it's that useful. Then I can move on to red dragonite, and as well as I'm going to skip this because this is really hard to get. Then to black dragonite, and then if I want to wear the full Carol set, then I would have to, not the full Carol set, if I want to wear, let's say at least the Carol's body that I got from Barrows, I would first have to unlock the full Carol set, and then it just goes from there. So I think that's the main things that covers for range. Next up, let's move on to mage. Now the same rules apply for all of the magic weaponry and armor. First of all, let's say if I want to give myself the mystic set, I have to first obtain the wizard set. Now the only thing that I'm going to substitute is the wizard boots, simply because it might take a while to get since it's a hard reward from medium clue scrolls. And even if I do get them, they're pretty useless because they don't really give that much bonuses, so I'm just going to spend a ton of time for nothing pretty much. Once I unlock the full mystic set, after that I'm going to move on to split bark, since this is pretty hard to obtain, even though it's nice robes, but it's pretty much the same tier as split bark or something. So to be honest, actually I can choose. Either I can unlock full mystic or full split bark. This actually might be easier over here to get than full mystic sets. After that, you know, it only just goes up from there. Now the next thing that I'm going to move on to, let's see, weapons. Now for this, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this, to be honest. I haven't really figured it out yet. So most likely I'm going to just give myself some staffs as a drop. And then after that, if I do actually decide to maybe do some bosses with mage, I'll have to first unlock all of these previous things. So the things that I'm going to be working on if I want higher tier magic weapons is I'm going to have to start earning all of these things like beginner wands. Then I'm going to have to get the apprentice wands. And this is have to be skippable because, you know, I'll have to first obtain this and move on to these things. And I think the master wand is going to be, might be actually better than the ancient staff. Ancient staff actually gives more magic damage, and this gives a lot of accuracy. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to unlock all of these weapons yet. We'll figure it out as I go with my progress. And with that, that should cover all of the magic, range, and melee setups. Finally, let's move on to 4 of these important things. First of all, let's start off with the clue scrolls. Now, if I were to allow the ability to be able to use all the rewards that I get from clue scrolls right away, without having to complete the full set before I use them, it would really ruin the series simply because of how much easier it is to get rune items and weapons from hard clue scrolls without having to pretty much complete all the previous sets to use them. So the rule is going to apply to clue scrolls as well. Now I know this is pretty harsh to be able to have to complete a full set of a certain item. Let's say if I want to wear Zamrock Blade Body, I'd have to get the Kite Shield helmet, body, and legs to be able to use it. It is pretty harsh, you know, but like I said, if I don't apply this rule, I can easily get myself a ton of rune, and that's going to ruin the whole fun of obtaining all the previous armors before I can use the rune. Now next up, let's move on to Miscellanea. Miscellanea is actually really nice for seeds and herbs and other things as well, but if I use Miscellanea, I'm not going to be a true Ironman because this is pretty much the same thing as almost using shops, since I'm going to obtain this without obtaining it myself. So this is not going to be doable on my Ironman as well. Next up, let's talk about quests. Now I was thinking about this really carefully, and the best solution that I came up for questing is that I will not have the ability to be able to quest earlier on to get a boost boosted start to boost a bunch of skills simply because it ruins the whole fun of obtaining those skills from an early on level. If my rule is to pretty much achieve everything myself, questing is pretty much kind of cheating. I know it's meant there to give you a boosted head start for certain skills, but like I said, for me, I feel like this is cheating if I want to try to make a true Ironman series. So the only time I'll be able to do questing is later on when those levels are as a decent level, and the experience that I get from those quests is not going to make a big difference. Next up, let's talk about the quest rewards. Now, the particular reward that I'm going to be talking about is going to be the Barrow's Gloves. Now, I know probably a lot of you guys are going to disagree on what I decided to do, and that is not be able to use any of the gloves that I get from Recipe for Disaster, simply because it ruins the whole point of obtaining a certain item myself. In the combat bracelets and the higher tier bracelets like a Raging bracelet is going to be useless, since the Barrow's Gloves are way much better than those two. So I've decided to stick to crafting all the bracelets myself to use instead of the gloves. And like I said, the Raging bracelet is going to be the best in slot that I'm going to use. So I want to stick on the path of actually achieving everything myself, since that is my main goal. Now, a lot of you guys might say that, you do achieve the Barrow's Gloves because you get a ton of quest points, you do the quest. But in reality, I did not really make those gloves myself or receive them from a drop, which means that I could not really use them since they were just handed to me. All I need is to pay like 100 something K for them. So that's what I decided to do. I'm not going to be using any of those gloves. And I believe any other rewards that you get from a quest aren't really that important. If I come up with something else, then I will, mention it in the video. So that concludes the quests. Next up, let's move on to minigames. Now, to summarize the minigames, you do get different kind of rewards. Let's particularly talk about pest control. For pest control, you get different kind of armors and weapons. And so I haven't really, to be honest, decided how I'm going to use the Void. It is really helpful, but personally, I think I'm not going to use the Void, and of course I'm not going to use any of the XP that I get from pest control, simply because it's the same thing as I just previously stated about the Barrow's Gloves, and that is that I did not really make that Void myself or got it from any drops, so I'm going to have to use all the hides myself instead. So that should conclude everything about these 4 things. I hope you guys are really looking forward to this. Now, I know I did not include everything that needs to be included in the video about other things, but as I play, I will find out more things, and I will, double check with you guys first if you guys agree on what maybe I'm going to do first before I do it. Now, the last thing that I wanted to mention to you guys before I end this video is that what I decided to do before I start uploading these episodes is that I want to try to pre-record maybe about like 3 or 4 episodes before I start uploading them, simply because I mainly focus on my Ultimate Ironman account, and I don't really want to upload a video really soon of these progress series and then not upload anything for like a few weeks. So first I'm going to record a decent amount of videos, and then after that I'm going to start uploading them probably like once a week or maybe less, which should be pretty nice. So that is everything that I wanted to say. I hope you guys are really looking forward to this series. Personally myself, I'm really excited, and this sounds like a really promising series, especially with Zaya coming out. There's a lot of really cool things to explore there that I can do on this account. And we'll see how the series plays out. Hopefully, like I said, it's going to turn out well, because it does sound like a really nice series. Aside from that, guys, huge thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys later.